share it on social media from your website?
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Yeah, we can have a quick talk about that at some point this week or next week if you want.
That sounds perfect. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So we've got several other people that will be joining us. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. It's cloudy and rainy here in Colorado, which never really happens.
Yeah, it's quite gloomy. I wasn't expecting that.
It is. It's quite gloomy outside. But nonetheless, it's really great for the flowers and the greenery because we know how dry it can be here.
Yeah, everything's going to look beautiful.
It's not snowing, right?
Exactly.
That as well.
All right, we're getting a couple more people in. Good morning, John. Thank you for being here. Everybody's muted, just FYI, just to kind of keep the sound down. We'll be starting very shortly. We're going to give it a couple more minutes for the rest of our guests to come on to this amazing event. We're very excited. We do welcome, if you do, we will be sending a little area in the chat about what our rules are and what we do here. But we always welcome people to let us know where they're from and their company. And if you have a LinkedIn profile, we'd love having those on our little chat area so that we can continue to expand our message, which is basically allowing more people to get into offsite construction and to also allow for that conversation to continue and expand. From our little group that started in January, we are bringing people from all over the world into our US of A area. We've had people from China and the UK and France. It's been really exciting. I talked to a gentleman last week that was on one of our calls. So it's exciting to have everybody here and certainly welcome you all to our Offsite Construction Series. My name is Audrey Grabesnik. Oh, we got one more. Here we go. My company is Modular Sure Site. We are a commercial and residential modular consultant, and we offer a full team of services from general contracting, feasibility reviews and reports for site visits, which is certainly important when we talk to Bruce and trying to have his product out on sites. We also offer set and crane services. So basically, we are your one-stop shop to allowing and understanding more about the modular or volumetric building of construction. So we're here to help, and our Offsite Construction Series is the second Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. All of our presentations are digital, and then they're always the last Tuesday at 4 p.m. You can find out more information on LinkedIn. We do have a Modular Sure Site available page. We also have it on our website under the Events tab. So we will move through these, Scott, if you don't mind. I'm going to introduce our partners. Without them, this couldn't be possible. Our actual first event was at Mountain View Window and Door location, but since of all of these situations that have happened with COVID, we are now obviously doing digital presentations, which opens up our bandwidth, which makes it exciting. So I'm going to introduce Matt McMullen, who is a general manager at Mountain View Window and Doors. Matt, take it away.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for joining us today. Also the executive director of Art of Construction, and Scott Hicken will talk here just in a second about what we do on the Art of Construction. But if you have window or door needs for any of your modular projects, including ADUs, please come see us. We lead with Anderson. We also carry Milgard and Prime vinyl windows. We also carry a large selection of sliding, folding, and accordion doors as well. We have architectural expertise on staff and also former general contractor expertise. So we can dive into your project with you and make it outstanding.
And it's pretty exciting because they are actually working on a couple of modular, very beautiful homes right now. They're in planning, right, Matt? So
Actually, one is in production right now, one up in
perfect.
Tabernash.
That's awesome. So yeah, I hope we can maybe do something on that. It would be exciting to see if your clients are willing to allow us to learn a little bit more about their project in the modular form. So thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Greg Crom is with 303 Development. He actually was my general contracting managing partner with the projects that we did for residential and now moving into commercial. Greg's company is 303 Development. They've done an extensive amount of traditional build products and now moving into a modular segment. We thank Greg and 303 Development. Our next feature is the Art of Construction, which provides a whole bunch of different services. And I'm going to let Scott speak about on behalf of Art of Construction.
Thanks, Audrey. Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott. I'm the executive producer of Art of Construction. So we are a podcast and informational platform for the world of architecture, construction, and engineering. I've done a whole podcast series with Audrey previously called System Built Lifestyle. You should go check out. Going on almost 200 episodes and just about 400,000 individual listens. Really work hard to connect forward-thinking people and technologies in the world of construction, focusing really heavily on sustainability and modular construction and things like that. Feel free to go to our website. You can listen to podcasts and learn, and we also help put on amazing events and webinars such as this one, which we're glad to be a part of.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. So we get to our amazing presentation with my colleague and I feel like a friend, Bruce Thompson. And I had the pleasure of meeting Bruce maybe about a year ago and his wife, Brenda. They have been working diligently and it's been super exciting to see their expansion and really what they have created. Bruce's company is Urbaneer Living, and his wife has been has she been an interior designer for like 30 years or how many years? For a while, right?
For a while, correct. And she was a big part of the inspiration. We've been married 35 years, and and she's always been a designer at heart. But this is the first time that we've really teamed up to do something together, so it's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. And in their whole journey of living smaller, they have designed this amazing auxiliary dwelling product, or an ADU product, which is basically a smaller home product, which I think is outstanding because it doesn't just feel like the space capacity of maybe 400 or 500 square feet. It feels so much larger. And Bruce has been just a great influencer into allowing people to understand that they can actually have something that is beautiful, well built in the modular design, and also that lives so much larger than life. So with that, I'm going to let Bruce take it away. And thank you very much for being here, Bruce, and spending your time with us.
Well, thank you so much. And let me share presentation here a moment. All right. I love it when technology works.
I know.
So thank you so much,
exciting.
Audrey. And
You're welcome.
thank you, everybody, for joining us. I feel like we've already accomplished something together, collaboration. No, an honor to be here today. And as Audrey said, this is really, it's been a lifelong journey for Brenda and I, and happy to share our story and look forward to questions. I just have a very brief presentation to go through, and then we'll open it up for any questions. But what I want to talk today about is how do we make buying an ADU like buying a car? And the topics I want to cover is really touch first on the housing problem, talk about kind of a proposed solution, how Urbaneer approaches, small space living and offsite construction, some of the challenges that we see, but at the same time, opportunities. And the flip side of challenges is always opportunities. And then just very briefly show you some of our work because we're proud of it. And I think it makes it more relevant when we can show examples of things. Audrey touched a little bit on our background, but I'll just share just a titch more so everybody knows who I am. I'm an innovator at heart, and I spent 22 years in the tech industry. And the heart of innovation is problem solving. And I think sometimes we forget that. innovation is not just a good idea. That's where it starts. But, you know, at the end, you really have to be solving a problem. And that was really driven home in the tech industry, where a lot of times you saw solutions chasing problems. And that's not the case in housing. I've been involved in housing for 10 years, and it's the only area of focus, I guess, as an innovator where the problem's actually gotten worse over the last 10 years. Earlier in my career, you know, we'd approach a problem and somebody would typically solve it, and there'd be 2 or 3 leaders, and then everybody kind of followed behind that. And that's kind of the classic story of technology innovation and IT innovation. In this case, the problem is so vast, you know, I'll probably spend the rest of my life and we'll only chip away at it, but we're determined, and I think we bring something unique to the party. And a little bit of the background on a lot of people don't know this part of our story. Urbaneer, the name was really derived from 2 words, urban and engineering. And there's a little bit of pioneering in there too, but we really wanted to think about engineered solutions to living spaces and to housing. And initially we looked at building our own modular factory. We're based in West Michigan, Grand Rapids. And Brenda and I partnered with a commercial construction company. We invested. I was on the board for 5 years, which really gave me my master's degree or PhD, I think, in the built environment and construction. But as I said, we looked at building our own factory and realized very quickly that number one, it's very expensive, capital intensive, and there's a lot of people out there that already do it. So a bit like Audrey, I think, or you and I we're kindred spirits, is, you know, we're trying to take the industry that's there and established and make the best of, and bring out the best, right, to do our work. But I talk about pre-engineered interiors because that's how we approach these spaces. And we really think about modularity for the interior, and we want to marry it up with the exterior so that we really can drive and bring a new solution to the marketplace. We partner with builders to be able to do, you know, the last 10 feet, the last 100 feet. That's always the hardest part. Really, nothing matters until, you know, it's built and somebody can actually walk in and experience the space. So it's very important, and we're building this network of builders around the country and bringing various solutions that I'll talk more about in a minute. So let me jump ahead here to, you know, the housing problem that we look at out there. And the numbers vary, you know, depending on what research you look at. There's somewhere between, you know, 3 to 8 million unit shortage out there. I think the number that I tend to focus on is out of Harvard, where they talk about there's a shortage right now of 7 million units that are at the right price in the right location with the right features for people. So it's a massive problem. And, you know, I always say that there's not one single solution to it. There just isn't. There's multiple things that have to be accomplished because it's so complicated. But I tend to break it down into 3 buckets. You know, there's policy issues, there's process issues, and there's product issues. And to us at Urbaneer, it's all about reducing the friction across the value chain to be able to, you know, produce a home. And when we look at the policy side, it certainly is this, you know, not in my backyard, right? That's been a huge issue, zoning, barriers to zoning. Although we're very optimistic, since we started, it's been really interesting to see, specifically around the accessory dwelling unit, ADUs, municipalities around the country, you know, open up the backyard, literally, and it's free land. It's real estate that's already been paid for. So that's taking a big chunk of the friction out. But there are other issues related to policy, but municipalities certainly are a big part of this. But then seeing California, where we just spent the last 3 months, statewide zoning for accessory dwelling units, which is a big, I could talk at length about that, but that's been a big removal of a barrier. But in addition, there's financing issues. There's all kinds of other things around policy, but that's a big part of the process. We're going to talk more about that. I think that's a big part of why we're all here, is looking at offsite construction, making that more efficient. And then on the product side, we think it's very, let me say it differently. There's a lot of opportunities to really come up with better products that meet the living, the way people live today, because it's changing rapidly. And if you even look at the last few months, I think, you know, we're really now focused on our living spaces that have to work harder than ever before, because we're working at home, we're going to school at home, and as well as living and caring for people. So I think there's a lot of opportunities on the product side. So when we look at housing and the challenges, those are the 3 issues. On the process side, where I want to spend a few minutes, this is a McKinsey report. I should have noted that here, but McKinsey has done a lot of work writing research the last few years in publications on how big the problem is. And this is from a study that they did a couple of years ago that I think is really fascinating. And it gets to the inefficiencies. And again, very complicated. There's not one solution or one problem, but to look at globally, in this particular report, they call out there's a shortage of 35 million homes globally. But the quantification of this to say that, $1.6 trillion a year is being wasted. And in such, the way they talk about it, there's not been major productivity or innovation breakthroughs in over 60 years in the construction industry. And that's really the problem. I think it's changing. And even since this came out a couple of years ago, I think there's a lot of smart people like all of us trying to tackle it. And many of us are coming from different disciplines, which I think is really key. I know when I was part of the commercial construction firm and on their board, I would ask questions constantly like, why do we do it this way? Why is it this? There's just, we need new thinking to really break down and change the problem because it is so complex or tackle the problem. But to think about that, $1.5 trillion a year wasted, that probably could solve a big chunk of the housing problem, right? If we could tackle that. So the process side of this is daunting. And I think, the way I like to describe when you buy a home today, this is kind of what it looks like, right? It shows up for the most part in pieces and parts in your driveway. And imagine if this is how you bought a car. You'd call the car dealership and say, I want a particular model, and they deliver it. And a crew comes together that maybe has not ever worked together before, never built this model. It's a one-off. And, results may vary. You're going to end up with something that costs more than budgeted. It's going to take longer. Some things will probably be crooked. There'll be some leftover parts, and not to be, I don't know what the word is. I don't mean condescending, but, typically you're going to say, good job, right? I mean, it got finished. And, I should preface all my comments here by saying, I don't have all the answers, and I don't mean to be too critical, but, we wake up every day with this kind of mindset of, okay, we need to change this because this is a big part of why we have a challenge is it's just not organized enough. And, of course, they don't build cars like this. They build cars in a factory, and they build standard models, and they think about the features that people want. And this was a problem that was solved 100 years ago, of course, by Henry Ford and others to drive affordability. What was Henry Ford's, whole premise is that anybody should be able to, not anybody, but, the average worker should be able to afford to buy a car. And he really brought that down in what was, the famous line, right? Any color, as long as it's black. But that's how they drove standardization and mass production to really get the cost down. And they worked on distribution, and they worked on all the other elements that were important. Think about the road infrastructure and, gas stations, all of that had to evolve to support the automotive industry. So we think about this as kind of a model, and I think this industry needs modeling or different ways to think about it, frameworks. And I think one of the best examples of the last 10 years has been Tesla. And if you think about what they have accomplished, it's not only the innovation around electric vehicles and how those are charged, it's also their approach to the market. How do they go to market? They determined early on that they could, again, with technology and the internet, bypass the traditional dealer model, although they have their own stores now, but you can get a car, a Tesla, delivered to your driveway. And I think it's really interesting. I hadn't looked at their site for a few months, but we're all talking now about touchless delivery, right? How can we get something without a lot of human interaction to keep us safe and keep us healthy? And I love their approach because, of course, you can get a custom, package, but they really focus on existing inventory so they can speed that delivery. But here's an important point. When they talk about custom, it doesn't mean that I can get it a foot longer or a foot wider, right? They would laugh at us. And again, the housing industry, it's a lot of mass customization, even for offsite construction. But I think if we consider the Tesla model to really drive it down to standard product that can be delivered as quickly as possible, as easily as possible, that is really the model. Because as a consumer, it's not acceptable if the car dealer says, I'll have it there in maybe a year, but it might take a year and a half. I got to go do all this work and blah, blah, blah. they've bundled the financing and they've got it all, just standardized. And we've accepted that as a consumer. Not that I couldn't go out and probably get a custom car built for $1 million. That's not the point. There's always that part of the market. But for the mainstream market, this approach really works. And as you look around their website a little bit, it's phenomenal because they've really got it down to just some base options, and they can tell you exactly what it's going to cost. And that is a really, really important point for the consumer. And that's how I think we want to start to consider housing is we as the consumer should know what something's going to cost. We should know when it's going to be delivered. And we should accept the mainstream, again, market that, I only have so many options to choose from. And I think if we can continue to drive this model home, it's really going to, again, be a big part of the solution, one part of the solution. So with that, let's talk a little bit then about where, ADUs are going. And a big part of our focus right now at Urbaneer is to work on this offsite model. And we partnered with Skyline Champion Homes. And a little bit of our history, a little bit more. We did 400 multifamily units before the partnership with Skyline Champion. Those were site-built solutions, and we delivered them successfully. For the most part, we had some learning experiences where we had to go back and make things right, which we did. That's part of the innovation process. It's messy. It's not always easy. And my joke always is, don't try this at home because it is hard. But we personally lived through it, and I'll share that story in a minute. And we've had some epiphanies along the way. But our introduction to site-built construction was really, offsite was almost a year and a half ago. And it was really amazing to learn about how things were built. It's the same material, same labor. So, that part is consistent with site-built. But it's the consistency and it's the predictability, and it's building in a controlled environment with people that typically a team that have built something similar before, maybe not the same exact interior, but they're working with a lot of standard, dimensions. So there's a rhythm to it that's much more efficient, I think, and they can take out the waste. And, anytime anybody's ever built a custom home, which we've built 2 now, and that dumpster sits in the driveway and it's filled up repeatedly and taken away. I mean, it's just really sad, especially in today's world. We're just putting things into a landfill. And who pays for that? The consumer, right? The buyer. I mean, and this, I don't know offhand what that waste is, but it's not just process waste. There is material waste in there as well. And so building in a factory, again, predictability around it, and then being able to deliver and crane it into the backyard. And this is an image of a Skyline Champion unit that was deployed in Portland, Oregon with Dweller, who's a really great partner, and they do some phenomenal things. But if you think, hold on, about the process here of being able to, again, build it off-site, predictable schedule, bring it to the site. There's probably a day of, blocking off the street, setting it, right? There's site work. Sorry, I skipped over that prior. And then there's utility hookups, which could be maybe 30 days. That construction process is so much more, especially for ADUs where, you're working in somebody's backyard, is a much better approach than site built when we can do it. For the primary reason of you're not tying up that neighborhood for 6 months with the trades coming in and out. You have a schedule, it's very efficient. You're able to, provide the homeowner with something that's much, much less friction in the process. And here's a little interesting stat. We had a chance to talk to the ADU specialist or staff person for the city of Los Angeles. In 2018, there were 12,000 building permits for ADUs in the city of Los Angeles. 12,000. How many do you think got built? If we could do a poll right now, was it all of them? No. Was it more? Of course not. It was 4,000. Think about that. 8,000 didn't get built. And the message is it's just very complicated for the homeowner. They really become a mini developer. If I'm a homeowner and I want to put an ADU into my backyard, again, municipalities are opening up across the country to allow this. But as a homeowner, first I have to find the contractor. I have to choose the design. I have to figure out how to get it permitted. And again, some of this is getting easier. But Los Angeles, they have a 16-step process for a homeowner to go through. And then once, I just go through all that, I have to get it financed. And then 3/4 of these are rentals. And now I'm becoming a property manager. So all of those touch points along the way and the challenges and the inefficiencies are why more units aren't getting built. And we know that offsite modular is not a solution for every backyard. We're learning that there's some that you just logistically can't get into. But making that a standardized process, again, with financing bundling into it, just like buying a car, we can take a lot of that friction out. And I think, if a new approach is like we're working on is introduced, maybe you can get that 4,000 up to 8,000. Maybe there's a chunk that never crosses the finish line because financing is just a really big deal right now for ADUs, and I could talk at length about that. But anyways, I think the opportunity to do something with modular for ADUs is massive, and that's why a lot of us are focused on it. So how do we look then at a new approach? And as an innovator, this design thinking model and human-centered design is something that I've been studying and utilizing for over 20 years. And if you're not familiar with it, it's an approach to really designing any type of product, and it's not typically used in housing. And what I just said about designing a product, I think that's the big transition. We think typically of housing as a service. We think of construction services. We need to make this shift into housing as a product. And so what does that mean? Well, we start first with really thinking about the occupant and their experience, and that's the empathy part. And when I say thinking about the occupant experience, when we started prototyping and doing some modeling 6 years ago with Urbaneer, we started in the warehouse. We taped off a 400 square foot apartment. We used plywood. We used duct tape. We used cardboard. And we just sat and tinkered and thought about, okay, if I'm living in 400 square feet, what do I need to do in that space as an occupant? Well, we broke it down into 5 things. You certainly need to cook or prepare food. You're going to dine. You're going to eat the food. You're working, and that's even more relevant, as I said today. You could be studying, you could be shopping, but it's something, probably on your computer. You're entertaining and you're sleeping. And there may be a workout mode in there too. I might need to go from 5 to 6. But we were actually able to patent our approach for the reconfigurability of space based on those 5 living modes. But we took about 6 months to work on that space. And we brought people in and we got feedback, not just from the actual occupants that might be in that space, but also property managers, from construction, from developers, people financing it. And I don't know how many iterations we did, but it was probably something of 15 to 20, different outcomes. And we got it to a point where we felt pretty good about it. We thought, okay, this is something we can take to market. So starting with empathy is very important. And then you're defining what the solution is. You're ideating, meaning you're trying things and the prototyping. And then, Audrey, you can help me. What's the 5th one on the right? Because the little Zoom boxes cover it up. What's the 5th
last
bubble?
One, test it.
Thank you. And the most important one. I couldn't remember it. I couldn't read it. Excuse me, everyone.
You're doing great.
Embarrassing. You test it. And so those 400 units that we did, we learned a tremendous amount by testing it. And one of the things we learned is that in a smaller space, if you can get it right and you really do focus on that occupant experience, I always say the punchline for the owner or the developer, whoever that might be that's writing the checks, is you can command more per square foot with this approach. And again, it's proven. We went back and looked at rent rolls because those are multifamily projects that we did that were site built. And we determined that we could get up to a 30% rent premium if you were able to achieve a better occupant experience, and people rented faster and they stayed longer. So all of that learning helped us from the site built model as we got into, and as we transitioned to offsite. But I think, again, going back to the empathy part, you really just, especially for the ADU, this is really, really important. We have to think about who's living in that space. And if you think about the composition of households today, 1 in 5 live solo, 1 in 5 is multi-generational. That is just a massive transformation versus the 1950s, where we assumed a nuclear family, right? We assumed just a lot of things around what that meant. And it is interesting. If you look at family sizes have gone down, demographics, over the last 60 years, our housing, went up in size, right? We went from about 1,500 square feet. I think we peaked at 2,600 or 2,700 square feet 5 years ago. Another interesting fact in there too is the self-storage industry over the last 60 years has become a $26 billion industry. And that started really in the 1950s, which is fascinating to me. Just a little anecdote there. But again, thinking about the occupant, and when we think about accessory dwelling units, I think we need to understand that for a lot of people, this is a period in their life. It's a transition, right? So if I'm an aging parent, I'm living maybe, in my children's backyard for a period of time, or if I'm a boomer, where we just saw in California, some boomers are moving into the backyard and renting out their main home. Or it's a rental situation for somebody that's coming along that you don't know, and it provides income for the owner. But it's really, I think, when people are downsizing and living in the backyard, if we can really consider what their needs are in that small space so that we can optimize their experience, that's how we win. And there's a lot of little details I'll talk about in a minute that go into that. But this is the primary approach that Urbaneer takes, and we design from the inside out based on those occupant needs. And there's a lot that goes into that. There's a discipline that I've learned the last couple of years, or an area of study called environmental psychology, and it's not very well known. If I could go back to school in my spare time, I would get a degree in it. I've read a lot about it, but it really breaks down to, how do people feel in a space? And here's in a smaller space especially, what are all the emotional, physiological conditions? And here's something interesting. The number one factor that determines how you feel in a small space is air quality. Second is lighting. And think about, we're staying in a hotel here in Des Moines, Iowa, as we make our way back to Grand Rapids, Michigan. But, the first thing when you walk into a hotel room is you want air circulating and you want natural light, right? So, that is an approach we take to our small spaces, is, again, thinking about what living modes people, what are they going to do in that space? And then how do we make them feel better so that they have a better experience? And I think there's a lot to be said on that today about wellness and staying healthy. As we have more multi-generational living experiences, we want it to be a good one, especially coming out of the current healthcare crisis. All right, so what are some challenges? So I talked about our approach and a little bit of the housing problem. Certainly, as it relates to ADUs, zoning is still a big deal. I think, again, I expressed optimism. We're seeing a lot of cities around the country, and we're seeing some states do statewide zoning. But I would say, over half the municipalities out there, you still can't build an ADU. And if you can, like where we're from in Grand Rapids, Michigan, they do have zoning that supports it, but they make it very, very challenging. You have to have your neighbor's permission almost. It's like raising chickens or putting a fire pit. I think you certainly do. You have to go around and get the neighbor's input. You have to do things with sight lines so it doesn't bother your neighbors. There's different considerations, whether it's a corner lot or a interior lot on a street. And then little things like infrastructure hookup. Some cities have made it a flat rate. So as you go through the whole process, think back to LA, you go through permitting and you have everything set. It's a flat rate for the utility hookups. If it's not, it's a challenge for a lot of homeowners because they might have already paid for the design, the architectural services, they paid for the permitting, they get that all into the city, and the city says, hey, it's going to be $15,000 for the utility hookups. That might stop the deal. And so, we really need to do more to make it easy. Again, a lot of municipalities, we're seeing like San Jose, California, they have ADU Tuesday. You can go in the morning. By the afternoon, you have your permit. They're really trying to reduce, again, the friction and some of the speed bumps in it. Excuse me. Financing is a big deal. And again, I go back to the auto example. Imagine if financing a car was similar to financing a home. And I think I don't know what percent of those units and those building permits in LA were stopped by financing, but it'd be interesting to know. This is changing, but we've seen, even more recently in the last few months, it's very hard now to get a home equity loan. That's how a lot of people were financing ADUs. And so there are banks such as, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. credit unions, where banking institutions that are much more easier to work with for financing. You have to become a member, but they do treat homes differently, ADUs rather. I know that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are working on this, but it's something we just absolutely have to tackle as an industry, and we have to bundle it back to the standard products. If I could get an ADU such we're working with, I'll share more in a minute, down to a couple different models, floor plans, a couple different option packages, we can start to help builders by bringing that financing in. And we know it's an individual thing to get financed, but if the bank is already familiar with the product, and that's a big part of taking the risk out, if it's a one-off thing that they don't understand, then it just adds to complexity. I do start to wonder too about real property versus personal property. If we can start to produce these in a situation where they can be almost repossessed at some point, that's the auto industry, RVs, how many different products out there, right, are like that. It does lower the threshold, and maybe that's something we need to consider. I think we have this notion in the US specifically where we believe housing is going to be there, or a home when you build it, it's going to be your structure, is going to be there forever. And we know that's not the case, right? A lot of them are get torn down. If you look in Japan, for example, they have a notion of kind of a 30-year home. And it doesn't mean that they just tear it down after 30 years and go in the landfill. They work to deconstruct the home in a way that is environmentally friendly. And I think we can design for that. And we can certainly, build an industry around that. And I think that might get back to, again, some of this financing issues and just the approach. And I could talk a long time about that, but I'll just kind of leave it there as some of the challenges.
Hey,
the
Bruce,
flip side then on the opportunity.
Yeah, and I'd like to interject a little bit on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So
please.
knowing a little bit more about the modular industry, especially in the Colorado market, you are correct. There are changing laws for zoning. They do have areas in Denver, and they have opened up Lakewood. To your constraints, there are situations where they are, their requirements are attaching you to a solid foundation and things like that. So it's always good if you are looking into doing an ADU, especially in pretty much any area, if you can go to the website and know the county or the municipality that you're building in. I think that's a really good first start in calling a planner, especially in Colorado, since we are such an active market and actually one of the biggest markets that is really entertaining more volumetric or modular construction. There are a lot more banks actually in Colorado and people that are looking to finance it. So after this presentation, if anybody is interested, let me know. I do have a list of partners that can help in that. And I think that's a really important part to doing this, because I think more and more people would love to have a product of what you have designed, Bruce, but it really is knowing those challenges and how do we have the conversation about getting through that. So I think that that's very relevant. And I think that there are solutions here in Colorado specifically.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I am very hopeful on all this. And it's changing so fast, which is really exciting. You almost can't keep up. And I think even the events the last 2 weeks are even good, and the last 2 months, 3 months, are even going to accelerate some of this conversation. So again, I always look at the challenges as the next thing is, what are the opportunities, right? And where can we as an industry jump in? I think, this notion of home ownership as kind of the underpinning of the American dream, I think that needs to change. Brenda and I had a chance 20 years ago to live in Europe, and it was really interesting. We rented a home in Munich, and home ownership is much lower, in Europe, but there are more housing options available. And I think it's in part because they treat housing as, what's the right way to say it, more of a verb versus a noun. And so it's not always considered a real estate investment. It's just a place for somebody to actually live, which is good. But the threshold is very high. I remember talking to the landlord for the home that we rented, and he shared with me it was a 50% down payment for the home, and there's no deduction for mortgage interest, which gets back to the policy issue. And this is not meant to be a political statement at all, but we're one of the few countries in the world where you can deduct mortgage interest, and it doesn't always incent, or what's the right word? It's geared more towards incenting people to kind of trade up and do a bigger home versus the more affordable part of the housing solution. So I would love to see some new models, and there's great examples out there where you shared equity. So if you're renting, or it's kind of like leasing a car, right? You know, there's a residual value at the end, and there's an opportunity to purchase the car, but it's a lower, you know, threshold to get in and have access to that vehicle. I think we'll see more on-demand solutions, and what I mean by that is, you know, for a lot of people, the ADUs, I said earlier, is for a transitional period. It's somebody in transition. The homeowner might not want that ADU there, you know, past that time period. And it could be, in some cases, we've heard that the ADU becomes a little bit like that swimming pool, where it's great for the family that's using it, but the new buyer that's coming in doesn't want that swimming pool there necessarily. So I do wonder if we start to look at some leasing models for ADUs. Again, maybe not on a permanent foundation, as you touched on, Audrey. And again, different ways to have allow people to get access, just to get, again, reduce that friction. I think we'll see new partnership models out there, and we're at Urbaneer kind of working on some of these, where I think the RV industry specifically and the automotive industry has really figured a lot of this out. And I wonder if we'll start to see some new partnerships between, you know, some of the larger offsite modular home builders and these other industries kind of come into play. And then how do we continue to unlock land? I was very fortunate 2 years ago. I sat with the head of innovation at the time at Fannie Mae, Jonathan Lawless, and he talked about the backyard as being, again, you know, real estate that was already paid for it. If we could unlock it with ADUs, that would be a tremendous answer, part of the answer, solution to the housing crisis. But I think also parking lots. Look, you know, having just spent the last 3 months in Silicon Valley looking around at empty parking lots because people were working at home. And what have we seen? Twitter has told their employees that they never have to come back to work. Facebook is saying only half their workers will come back to work. So I think, you know, there's opportunities to not only convert some spaces, which is not always easy for interior space, commercial to living space, but also I just wonder about, you know, can we take, if retail is changing, you know, think about, and I can't remember the statistic exactly, so bear with me, but it's something like there's 4 to 1 parking, the ratio between parking spaces and people in the US is something like that. Maybe it's 3 to 1. And, you know, people aren't driving as much in cities. We're seeing roads, you know, blocked off and kind of turned back to pedestrians, right? As I said, people are working remotely. So I think there is land in suburban areas, especially where we're going to see growth versus, you know, high density in the urban core. So there's a lot of land that can be converted. And I just think higher density, you know, suburban infill, compact infill is what we're going to see. So these are, you know, even beyond ADUs. We look more broadly. ADU is an application for housing, but I think there's others as well. Okay, so I'm going to land it there a minute, and I'd love to talk, Audrey, if we still have time, a little bit about our projects, but I'm going to let you guide.
Yeah, I think it's really important for them to see, your product, because I think that's what uniquely makes you different in the market space. I think that it would be really valuable. Okay,
all right. So give me about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions too. So as I might have touched on, Urbaneer started as a company. We incorporated in 2013. We did our first project in 2014, and this was it. It was 498 square feet in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We did 2 apartments, and we took, again, our modular approach to the interior, but this was the first movable wall, and this is one of the things that we have patented. And it's really, you could think about it as a room on demand kind of, but it makes this 89 or 98 square feet live like, you know, 600 or 700 square feet because of the flexibility. And so we put in the wall bed, as you see on the left, and the storage and the sofa, so that all worked as both a seating and a sleeping area. And then this movable wall, if I had the next picture on the other side, we put a little twin bed that folded up into the wall. And we really, again, thought about, okay, this is a studio unit. How do we kind of coined the term at the time, a studio plus. And, you know, how could we approach this living space to make it live larger? And it was interesting, you know, as an innovator, there's always a lot of critics out there, you know, and I think it's something that we have to be brave and we have to be bold, and we have to know that a lot of people are going to question what we're doing, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, and you don't know. And as I always say, results are going to vary. But in this case, you know, we did show a value prop where we could make the space really represent those 5 living modes. And so, you know, kitchen of course, on the side you can't see, so the eating and dining, but the working, was accomplished. On the other side of this movable wall, we also had a workspace that folded down so you could sit and work. And then we had the guest area. And then with this wall moving back and forth, one of the things that we're able to demonstrate here, and it's again in our patented, one of our patents on the reconfigurability of space and the movable wall, is we can deliver power to that wall. Not at the moment for automating the movement, that's on the horizon, but for the TV that you can kind of make out in that screen, and other things that you might want to plug in, we can actually deliver 110 power to that wall. That's a really important thing for the flexibility of space, because, you know, people need that space, as I said earlier, to work harder and stuff. They're going to be working there. They're going to need power if they're going to have a TV. We see other applications for it. We can embed power in the track to that wall, but we can also embed power in the floor, and it's wireless power. If you're not familiar with it, there's both inductive and conductive charging, and allows you to transmit power without a physical connection. So you always have a power source, but depending on what you're trying to power, you can transmit the power wirelessly. And it's interesting now, you're seeing cordless appliances. There's a standard around that. And so that I could have a situation that, and actually we demonstrated this at the Consumer Electronics Show 2 years ago in the Smart Kitchen Summit, I can literally put a wireless, a cordless, let's say it that way, blender, or, you know, whatever it might be, even a cooktop, and put the appliance on top and charge it, or I'm sorry, transfer power, so that through wireless charging. So you're actually, you know, heating up or delivering power to that appliance and not, you know, heating up the surface. And so a lot more I can share on that. But again, the flexibility of space and thinking about how people live today, you know, kitchens and bathrooms are the most expensive real estate in the home. We as an industry, I'll say, tend to oversize the kitchen. We supersize it. And it gets back to both kind of the environmental psychology elements. When you walk in and you see this monstrous, you know, refrigerator, which you would see in this space, that's really designed for a family of 4, and there's one person living in the space, it just doesn't make sense. So, you know, smaller appliances, I think at some point we might get away from a dedicated cooktop. That could go literally in the island, could be installed there for those days that you do cook, but people are cooking less and less. So again, this was an early project 5 years ago, going on 6, hard to believe. We learned a lot from it. And, you know, again, those learnings continue. This is a little house, our personal home that we built in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We haven't seen this house for 3 months. We're going to see it tonight, and we're so excited to get back after living in apartments and hotels, which is a whole other story. But this little house, we refer to it as the Urbaneer Bungalow, was constructed in 2016 in a historic area district in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it was site built, so there was not any of that innovation, process innovation. But we really, and I need to give the credit to my wife Brenda, as the co-founder of Urbaneer. She really designed this space from the inside out to really incorporate the space optimization products we've developed, but to really think about our own family. We have 2 boys in their 20s. They're in and out still and launching into the world. And so if you can believe it, this house, as you look at it, has 4 sleeping spaces. 4 technical bedrooms. 2 are flexible and 2 are fixed. And so the footprint is 800 square feet. There's some living space up and down, but it really does live larger, and it serves as a living lab for us. We are updating it constantly, which is a challenge. That's a whole other story too. But, you know, we've had hundreds of people through this home, CEOs and all kinds of people from companies wanting to understand, you know, what is it that we do in the space. But I think what we've learned, both as a home owner and now kind of getting into this new hybrid home building business, is that the process part of this was incredibly, it was painful. You know, if you've done site built, this is a custom home, it's very hard for the homeowner. It took 6 months longer, you know, it cost more and budget overruns, all of that. But, you know, the outcome is we love it. It's a great home. But it really, the light went off a little bit that we needed to control as many variables as we could, as I said earlier, and that we needed to start to work towards more offsite to make it efficient. But the last thing I'll say on here is, you look at this, the front of the house is 16 by 32. This is the basis for the ADU that we're now marketing. So the outcome, after a couple of years of living there, we realized, okay, we could almost just market that as a product and build it. And we brought the champion executive team over last year about this time to see it, and the design really did become the basis for what we're doing today. So here we are. So we are now marketing a product with Skyline Champion called Urbaneer by Genesis. There's actually a couple of additional floor plans we're working on. The exciting thing for us as a relatively new company still is these are being built across the country. So right now we have one in production in Strattonville, Pennsylvania, that's going to a building partner called Backyard Cottages in Washington, D.C. We have another one starting soon in Woodland, California, up near Sacramento. We built one in Corona, California, and there's a few additional plants coming online. So we really were able to take all of our learnings of the last 5 or 6 years and bring it to this amazing partnership. Skyline Champion, I can't say enough good things. They really good cultural fit. They understand what we're trying to do. It's work in process. We're continuing to innovate, but we've incorporated a lot of our features into this unit type. And for those of you that were able to visit us at the International Builders Show, which seems like a decade ago, we had, in this 510 in the middle, we had 3,000 people in that unit, roughly. I'm maybe rounding up, but in 3 days, it felt like 2,000. And we stood, inches apart, and everybody's talking. And if you had told us then that, I guess we wouldn't get out of bed if we knew a lot of things about the future. But anyway, that seems like a long time ago. But this is the interior that we showed. And some of the things that we incorporated here, what I talked about environmental psychology. When you walk into this space, and Audrey, you touched on this, but you see a lot of natural light. And when you come in the front door, one of the signature things that Brenda came up with in our own home that we're continuing to incorporate is this notion of a window backsplash. So when you walk in, you see light, you see through the space, and you instantly perceive it as larger, which is a really small thing, but it's a big thing in terms of how people feel. Back to that occupant experience. Notice that all the appliances, nothing sticks out. It's not that massive honking refrigerator that sticks out an extra, these are counter depth appliances, 24 inch. And what's interesting, this is a Whirlpool appliance kitchen. They didn't have this product 5 years ago when we started. We went and met with them. We met with their design and innovation team. They had it in Canada, they had it in Europe, but they didn't have it in the US. And it was really, so we had to work initially with Bosch, which is a great appliance, but more expensive for people. Very good quality, but good European fit and finish. And again, so kind of that Scandinavian, color palette, clean lines, clean design. The other thing you'll notice is the volume in the space. And so it's a mono-pitched roof. We can do gabled roofs and more traditional things. But in this space, when you come in and kind of make the turn, then you see the volume of the space and you see the windows. And we spend a lot of time on window placement in this unit. When you look back, you see the track, and that is the movable wall. What that allows in this 510 is really the space to live like 750 square feet. And that wall slides out, and again, you'll notice the TV on that wall, so we're powering it. And you can walk around the other side, and here you have kind of that room on demand with the wall bed and, the bedroom. And we also have a sofa that can be integrated into the right space so that you can make this into a den if need be, or you desired. So we're working on a whole host of products. In the Strattonville build, we'll have a wall table, and we have other things under development. So, our role in this is it's the Urbaneer brand. These are Urbaneer branded units. It's the design that we brought in collaboration with Skyline Champion, and then it's our interior components. So all pre-engineered, back to that Urbaneer. We're thinking about Urbaneer, smaller spaces, can be suburban, can be vacation, but there's kind of a mindset around a smaller space, and that pre-engineered interior. And the next frontier for us is to really work on those standard option packages. So it can get down to, buying an Urbaneer ADU is like buying a Tesla. That's kind of the dream. So thank you. I'm going to land it there. I left enough time for questions. Thank you very much. And again, thanks, Audrey.
That was an awesome presentation. I think it's so valuable for people to actually see your product. I did leave your website into the chat area. If we are open for discussion, are there any questions that any of our participants would like to ask Bruce? Now is your time. Just unmute yourself and feel free to ask any questions, please.
Hey Bruce, Jason Carter here. I just want to say great job. We met back in 2017 when you were getting ready to push this stuff out. You just left Katerra. Very excited that you landed with Mark Yost and Champion. And I did spend some time at the IBS show and toured the house. What a great event. And a lot of people loved the idea of it. And ADUs definitely have their spot in the market. And so just wanted to comment, great job, love the product, and love continuing to see you develop the product from 17 to today. So look forward to you seeing
Thank you very much.
As well. Are you going to go next year? You coming this year again?
Absolutely, and I saw that they just announced that the Consumer Electronics Show is going to go forward in Las Vegas. I think IBS next year is in Orlando, right? But I haven't seen any notice on that notification. I'm sure that we'll go and do it a little bit differently, but absolutely, no update yet on whether we'll have an ADU there again, but we'll be there in some form. We'll have a presence.
Gotcha.
So thank you very much.
Bet, Bruce. Good to see you.
Thanks, Jason. It's nice to see you on the call. Thank you. Are there any other questions? And then Bruce, would you mind stop sharing your presentation, please?
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to kind of take it from here. If you are thinking about, purchasing, or you wanted to, know a little bit more about ADUs, again, you can contact me. You can contact Bruce directly. Our next Offsite Construction series is going to be with Manufacturing. If you are not familiar with them, they are really an amazing technology platform that are solving industry solutions for modular construction. Jason Barber is the vice president. He actually lives here in Denver, and their company is based in Boston. I actually got to meet the president in March, actually before COVID started. So it was kind of crazy, but exciting nonetheless. So he will be presenting the last Tuesday of this month on June 30th. It will be at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time if you are in Colorado, 3 if you are in California area. Central Standard Time is 5, and Eastern Standard Time is 6 o'clock. So we hope that you can join us for that. The link will be sent out on a thank you for attending this, so you'll be prepared for the next one if you are interested. Also, please remember that on our events page on Modular Sure Site, we do have all of our pre-recorded presentations from this year. They're always really great to kind of pick up if you're trying to understand the industry a little bit more, and you can always make inquiries. I'm here to help and connect you. Again, we'd like to thank our partners, the AOC, 303 Development, and Mountain View Window and Door. If you have any questions or are looking to find out more about their companies, we have their website presented for you there. Please feel free to reach out. We're here for your support and wanting to do more business with you. And here are ways to contact and connect with Modular Sure Site. We have our Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn profiles for your availability. We truly believe in this industry, not just modular, but all offsite constructed opportunities out there. So if there's something that is triggering your brain or you're really wanting to know more about it, please connect with me. Today we had a gentleman from France, we had one from China, one from Japan. We are really trying to bring our industries all together, and it's really great. Collectively, we have a voice and we can help each other grow and make this more of a standardization for processing and building. So please let us know how we can help you. So thank you again for attending. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you to everyone. We are excited that we had this opportunity to speak with you, Bruce, and the presentation will be up probably by Friday. We also have a YouTube channel so that we can actually share the information. If you do have any questions or concerns, or if you have any suggestions, please send me a text or an email. I'd love to connect other people and programs. Again, here in Colorado, this is really our main focus, but please let us know how we can help you. We're here for you and again, for this conversation. So thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful, amazing Tuesday, and we'll look forward again to seeing you on June 30th.
Thank you, Audrey.
Take care, Audrey.
Thank you all. Have a great, great day.
Thank you, guys.